Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh from MitsuTimes. Today, my guest is the owner and driver of probably one of the most recognizable 2Gs out there, Mr. Garrett Mealing. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, man. It's good to be talking to you.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you on. I think you're our first Hillclimb guest in the 120 or so episodes that we've done. I tried to get a couple other guys, but so far, just you. And I'm glad it's you. Because awesome. I feel like everybody who's been on tuners for a while knows your car. So they're going to see
fair enough.
that car right away and be like, oh, shit, I know that guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, there's only one Hillclimb left in Canada. The one that's, like, 45 minutes from me that I run every year. That's the only one left in Canada now. So that's kind of crappy, but sort of cool at the same time, I guess.
Yeah. So it's becoming less of a thing, would you say? Or are you seeing different people?
It's not growing. It's definitely not growing in Canada. I mean, I don't know much about, like, the rest of the U.S., but in the Pacific Northwest in the U.S., like Oregon, Washington, there's a good handful. I think there's like 6 or so, maybe even 7. Okay. And I've done one of them. I actually hold the GTM record at Mary Hill Loops Hillclimb in Goldendale, Washington. That class is defunct now. They've changed those classes, so it doesn't really mean a lot anymore. But I'm hoping to get back there and run under the new classes and see what I can do.
Yeah, that'd be real cool. I keep seeing one about this place in Pennsylvania. Are you familiar with that?
No. You know what it's called?
I don't, but I will get that answer for you before we hang up. Apparently there's been a lot of Evos and stuff checking that out and making some runs there, so that's pretty cool. And then obviously, I actually, you know what? I take back what I've said before, because I have had on 2 other Pikes Peak guys before, so.
Yeah, that's my end game goal.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a few in Pennsylvania, it looks like.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Jefferson something or other. Pagoda Hillclimb.
That may be the one.
Yeah.
I have to go back and look at some Facebook posts. But, you know, in the time that I've been keeping an eye on Pikes Peak, I haven't seen any 2G DSMs. I know back in the early 90s, I think a 1G factory supported made the run up when it was still gravel, but no 2Gs. So that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think I remember that. What was that company called that raced them? Oh man, Pennsylvania's so far from me. I just looked it up.
4-day drive.
It was like Archer. Was it the Archer Racing guys that did that back then?
Yep, the Archer brothers. Yep.
I think that might have been. I don't know what the heck this is in miles, but it's 4,350 kilometers. So whatever that is, 3,000 miles from me.
Long ways. Yeah.
I'm looking at going to Mexico this fall for a race, and it's way closer to go to Mexico.
Man, that's crazy.
That's funny.
You don't realize how wide the United States is, I guess, until you see something like that.
Yeah, and I'm on the West Coast. Well, close to the West Coast, a few hours from the coast. Yeah.
Well, Garrett, let's get right into it. What's the setup on your 2G?
Man. So it's a 2-liter 11-to-1 motor with the Andrew Brilliant AMB V2 kit on it. I pushed him for a few years. I'd say it took me to kind of convince him to do the second version of the kit that he originally had on his 2G. And he told me if we could find 5 guys that wanted to do it, that we'd do it. So we came up with 5 guys. I believe the only other person that's actually got a running car that's going is Paul Jaquish. How do you say his last name? So he's running the same kit as me, and other than that, I believe the rest of the kits are just sitting in garages somewhere, or maybe haven't even been built.
Wow.
And like, of course, Carbonetics built those for us, and yeah, so it's honestly not like, my car's not that crazy. Like, it's still on ECM link. The whole rear end is completely stock, like stock everything in the back. Stock brakes, stock diffs, stock axles, all of it. Yeah. I do plan on doing a tubular subframe and stuff like that eventually in the rear. And then the front is the only thing left stock in the front as far as suspension is just the lower control arms. I should probably put some Paul Volk ones in there eventually, but it looks like FIBA Motorsports also working on the compression arm, so that would be cool. But yeah, like it's not super wild. Like I'm running what do you call it? Losing my train of thought on the suspension. It's KW V3s.
Okay.
And they are the KW V3s that were on Andrew Brilliant's World Time Attack car, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, for sure.
I managed to pick those up off of Philip Acerto from C1 Motorsports. When he bought the car from Andrew, he sold me those. So it's kind of neat to have those on there just because they were an old Andrew relic.
Yeah.
But they've worked well. And then I've got FIBA Motorsports tubular front subframe. Just like some run-of-the-mill Megan Racing uppers just for camber adjustment. And then, yeah, Shep Stage 3 trans, welded center diff, which a lot of people are surprised by.
Does that only affect the turning at slow speed? So whenever you're going fast, it doesn't really matter as much?
It doesn't seem to, like, I mean, on the hill climbs, I've got first gear hairpins, and the car seems to rotate just fine. And
okay.
Like the way it's set up right now, there was a couple years where I was struggling with the low speed stuff and having it push, and I kind of assumed that was that welded center diff.
Yeah, I would as well.
But now the way it's set up, it seems like it's really neutral in the low speed stuff, and I put a giant wing on it this year, and that made it a little bit pushy in the high speed stuff, which I plan to make more front downforce to counterbalance that. But in all honesty, in the hill climbs at the high speed corners, I don't mind it being a little bit pushy.
Yeah.
If you lose the back end at 120 miles an hour in a road that's 2 meters wider than your car, there's not a lot of room to save it. It's not like a track. So it's a little nicer when if the front end just pushes a little on you, you're like, okay, drop the throttle a bit, get it to tuck back in. It's less scary.
For sure. And you didn't even mention that outside of those extra 2 meters, there's a hill going down.
Yeah, there's cliffs and trees and barriers and stuff. I've gone off once at Knox and I hit the barriers, and luckily the car slid sideways for a half decent amount of distance, and I only hit it like 20 miles an hour, so it bent the rad support and broke the splitter and a couple little things, but I fixed it that night and was running again the next day. But there's definitely there's no good spot to crash there. If you go off, you're hitting something hard for sure.
So Garrett, what is it that got you into hill climb racing in the first place?
Well, I started racing I don't know, when I was in my teens doing autocross and stuff, which is where I think, the bulk of people that get into this end up starting, unless they started as a kid in karts, right? But and then I started co-driving in the Canadian Rally Championship with a friend of mine, and he started doing this hill climb that I knew. I'd been to the hill climb when I was a kid, but I hadn't been to it for years. And I went to watch him, and I was sitting there, and my car had been in the garage in pieces for a few years. I'd kind of stopped daily driving it, and I hadn't decided what I wanted to do with it yet. And I went and watched the hill climb, and I was like, man, this is silly. I just felt like a bunch of the cars were just not as good as I would wish them to be running a hill climb. And I was like, I can build a better car than most of these guys. I'm sure of it. So then that year I just put a roll cage, slicks on the car. That was it. The car was already a 400 horsepower street car. So left the motor alone, roll cage and slicks, and went and got my time attack license and ran it the next year.
Hell yeah.
And pretty much been hooked ever since then. That was 2015, and I haven't missed a year other than the COVID years that it didn't run.
So the 2G came before the want to hill climb?
Yeah, I've had the 2G since 2005, I think.
Oh, wow. So what is it that drew you to the 2G?
It was just happenstance, actually. I was in university at the time, and I had a 1980 Corvette, which on a university budget is not the easiest thing to put gas in every other day.
I could imagine.
So I was like, yeah, I got to get rid of this V8 for now. And I was always kind of a V8 guy, and I still am, to be honest. But I bought the Talon because I was looking for, an SW20 MR2, like the newer-ish MR2s, and I don't know why I wanted an MR2. I like the two-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, leather, AC. Like I wanted like some 90s, you know, an RX-7 or something would have been cool if you could find a nice one. Should have, because back then they were still cheap. But yeah, I couldn't find one that was nice. And then one of my buddies was like, "Hey, I found this 2G DSM. And I think it was like 6,000 Canadian at the time." And I went and looked at it, and the thing was like pretty mint. Like to this day, there's not a speck of rust on it, nothing. I mean, it sits in my garage 97% of the time now, but like the car was rust free, everything was good. The only thing that had been done to it is someone had put a small 16G on it with no tuning, so that was sketchy. But it ran fine, and I put DSM Link in it like right away.
Smart.
And
man.
like I don't know, I drove it around the street making 275 wheel horse or something on a small 16G for a couple of years, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I went to like I think my first turbo was an FP 3065, which is was like the big turbo back then.
Yeah, the big bolt-on turbo. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I went to that, and then about I don't know 6 years later, that one blew up, and I put a 3582 on it, and I've pretty much had some variant of a 3582 on it ever since.
That's probably perfect for a lot of people nowadays. I feel like they go straight to a 6266. Those 3582s would be perfect for the street nowadays. I mean, I know street DSMs are getting less and less, but yeah.
And I mean, on the new motor with 11-to-1, like I'm spooling that turbo in the low 4,000s. Like it's pretty good, and then it pulls hard to 8,500, makes 575, 600 wheel horse at 30 psi. Like it's pretty sweet.
Nice.
Some of you may have seen that my turbo blew up at the Hillclimb this year, like on the second run. So right now I actually don't have a turbo in it, so we're just looking into options. But a G30 900 looks like where we're headed.
That's cool. I think that's from what you came from to what you're going to now. I think that's going to be great because you get, even though it's a bigger turbo, probably better response in the end run.
Yeah, I think like our initial math with an 11-to-1 motor on a 2-liter, we're thinking it should spool like easily in the low 4s, and like the potential even on the G30 series is like 75 pounds a minute. So like they say 90, but I mean that's probably not a circuit racing level of flow. Maybe a drag race flow you can get there. I don't know. But if I can make an honest 600 wheel horse and have it spool at 4 and spin to 9, like it'll be pretty sweet setup.
Now, forgive my ignorance, Garrett, but why stick to the 2-liter? Why not go up to the stroker like most of the circuit racing and hill climb people that we see?
So I've thought long and hard about this, and there's a couple of reasons. One being the parts are not getting easier to find. So like it's hard enough to find the 2-liter cranks and the 2-liter blocks and all that stuff these days. And I eventually I will go to a dog box, but knock on wood, my Shep Stage 3 that's in there now has been flawless. I've never had an issue with it, and I had that transmission built by Shep in 2008.
Oh wow!
So like, I've been bagging on that transmission for 15 years, and I've never been into it.
That is amazing.
Yeah, so I'm afraid to mess with it. Well, to be fair, I actually went into it this year because I put the Boost and Performance billet bearing plate in it.
Oh yeah.
But I'm afraid, like I know Andrew Brilliant had a 2.3, or maybe he was even a 2.4. And man, he was eating transmissions every weekend, and he was making similar power to me, like 600 wheel. And the problem is he was probably making 550 foot-pounds of torque or something.
That extra torque was getting him.
So I make like the last time I was on the dyno with it, it made 475 foot-pounds at like 4,500. And I think if you start making north of 5 or making high 4s below 4,000 RPM, like those transmissions just don't live.
Yeah.
And then it's the same thing though. You see guys, I made 800 horsepower and went 910s on a stock transmission, but like for how long? I don't know.
Right. Rebuild every time out.
Yeah, and I found now, like especially I just put an X Clutch USA twin plate in it. And before, like, I struggled to rev it up to around 9 because it just didn't like shifting there. But now with that twin plate, it's shaved a tenth off all my shift times, and it goes
Wow.
in like butter. So like, I think my goal is just leave it as a 2 liter and rev the shit out of it.
I like that plan.
Yeah, which is fun too. Seeing $9,000 on the tack doesn't suck.
Was it Brilliant, or was it somebody in Brilliant's like friend group that came up with the sequential? But I want to say it was for a front wheel drive 2G.
Well, so Andrew did have a Hollinger, and I believe Philip Achirdo, I can't say his name. I don't know how to say his name. Sorry, Philip. I believe he still has that Hollinger case.
Oh, okay.
And we've had a few conversations about what to do with it. And I think he's talked to Hollinger, and Hollinger was kind of like, well, like, it's going to take this and whatever. And they don't even know exactly what it'll take to make it run. And they don't really know how much it's going to cost. And they don't know how long it's going to take. So, like, I don't know. And from what I understand, it could be done as an all-wheel drive transmission as well.
Oh, cool.
But
Wow.
I don't know that Andrew ever did anything with it. I think he was still just running his regular 5-speed. Like, he had that Hollinger, but I don't think anything ever was. I don't know if it was ever actually used.
Wow. That's still pretty
Or if it
cool
was,
that,
it was
that somebody
brief.
was trying that.
I know. And then I saw recently somewhere in the UK, I think someone is making a sequential for the Evo 123s that would be doable in the Talon, but
Oh,
I think
wow.
they're like 25,000 pounds or something.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine
Like,
that'd
it's
be cheap.
wild. It's wild money. If I'm going to spend that much money on a transmission, I'm going to put an LS in the bloody thing. Right? Like, you could go put whatever motor you want in there in a sequential and make it rear-wheel drive for
Yeah.
less than that.
For sure. And you'll
Like, it would
never
be-
have to worry about the transmission.
Yeah, it would be super cool to do something like that. And then there is some sequentials out there from like rally cars in the UK and stuff from back in the day, but they don't hold any power. They're like whatever the hell 400 Newton meters works into torque, but it's not enough.
Not enough for what you need.
No, I want to make at least 600 horse and probably right around that 500 foot-pound range. But I'm hoping that boost and bearing plate will keep it together, and one of these days I'll end up having to phone our buddy Tim Zimmer and probably build a dog box. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that if I can avoid that and still make 500 or 600 horse and 500 foot-pounds on what I'm doing, that'd be nice to not spend the money on that.
Spend it on other stuff, yeah. Like going to
I think-
Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. I think dog boxes have their own downfalls too, right? So
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I mean, Garrett, I think a lot of people listening to this are probably going to be drag racers. So I want to talk about the modifications and the tuning strategies that you use to get the most out of the 4G63 and the 2G when it comes to these hill climb races.
So the struggles that I had, because this car started as I started drag racing this car, like just about everybody does with them, right? I think my best time was like a low 11 at 125 mile an hour or something. That was on the 3065.
So you've been
And I mean,
kinda in
when I
both
was doing that
worlds.
was, yeah, and that's where this car started. And I mean, a low 11 in mid 2000s or whatever, 2007, 8, when I put that turbo on, that was pretty quick. Like these days, it's like guys are going on 9s on street setups, but that wasn't like that back then.
Yeah.
You had Shep going 8s or something back then, and then I think in whatever it was, 2007, he went 7s, and everyone's like, yeah, that'll never get beat.
It took a long time, to be fair.
It did take a long time. But yeah, so I started out doing that, and then when I started hill climbing, which was 7-8 years later, like it was a while later when I started actually trying to circuit race the car and whatnot. The biggest thing was just keeping all the systems cool. Like, it was not like the first year I drag raced it, the poor car would be like 230, or not drag race, hill climbed it. The car would be 230 degrees at the top of the hill.
Oh my gosh.
Be sitting there popping the hood and turning all the fans on and trying to run everything and pouring water over the radiator, just trying to bring it down to temp. And I was boiling over the power steering. It was every system on that poor car was just hot. So that's been probably the main thing to try and figure out, is keeping everything cool. This year, before the turbo blew up, was the best year yet. The car never saw over 190 climbing the hill on that 11-to-1 motor, and probably making 550 horse at 25 psi. It trapped a similar speed only like 4 or 5 kilometers an hour slower than I did at 30 psi on the old motor. So it was making good power.
That's really cool. I like that.
But yeah, temps. It's all temps.
Keeping them down.
I never thought in a million years. Yeah, I never thought in a million years I'd boil over the power steering in a 2-minute run. But it literally was pumping fluid out at the top, just bubbling out of the power steering cooler or power steering reservoir. And I had to put like a 10 by 8 little like transmission cooler on the power steering loop.
Wow.
And then it was good. But yeah, just dumb stuff like that you don't think about drag racing, right?
Never. That's really cool. I would have never thought that would be an issue.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing too is like the tune. I run the tune quite conservative. Like even on ethanol, I'm only running like 14 degrees of timing, and I try to run it in low 11s, high 10s for AFRs. Like try and keep it as conservative as I can, and make power with boost. And I think the extra ethanol helps it stay cool too.
Yeah. So, Garrett, do you think if you could go back in a time machine and do this build all over again, would you do it the same way, or was there some things that you would change?
It'd be a straighter line to where I'm at now.
Yeah. Save some more money.
Yeah, it's gone through lots of different tweaks here and there. You know, different suspension setups, different control arms, different subframes, and like you say, like I'm one of the few guys, like there's, you know, I can think of maybe 4 or 5 guys off the top of my head that are doing stuff like this with DSMs. And so when you start doing stuff like this with DSMs, a lot of guys reach out to you like, hey man, I'm trying to build a thing to do this. Do you want to try it? And it's cool and everything, and I love it, and I would never turn it away, but you find a lot of problems when you're doing that. So it can be tricky, right? You're running stuff that you don't know if it's going to work, and a few times it hasn't, and a few times it's worked really awesome, and we've come up with products that work great. So that road makes it a little windier than it is, but I mean, I can't afford to just throw money at it. So when guys come to me and like, hey, I'm gonna build a lower control arm, or I'm gonna build a tubular subframe, I'm wondering if you want to try it out. It's I'm flattered, honestly. It feels pretty cool to have something that people are like, yeah, well, if he can get through it without wrecking it, then it should be good.
Right. This is how we're going to test it, yeah.
Yeah. We'll let Garrett go beat on it and see what happens. If I were to do it all again, and I like was just going to start from scratch and it didn't matter what car I run, probably not. Probably wouldn't run that.
Yeah.
And it's not because it's not good at it. I think it actually is good at it. Like, I mean, Kyle and Jesse and Paul are all doing it, and they're all doing well at it. And so, like, the car is capable. It's just that the aftermarket support for this type of racing with these cars isn't really there.
Yeah.
Like, if you go drag racing, man, pick your parts. There's everything. Magnus guys build all sorts of stuff for that, and, like, you can do whatever. But as soon as you try to go road racing with them, like, there's just not that much stuff meant for road racing for these cars. Where, like, you know, you go Silvias or any of that stuff, like Hondas especially, like, there's every manner of part you could think of for this to do road racing or hill climb or time attack.
And I've always wondered why that is, because the 2G seems like it would be, like you said, great for this type of racing. A lot of people say that the double wishbone suspension is what you want, right?
Yeah, it's good. And I mean, Andrew told me, he's like, the reason he started land speed racing with his, that's where he got his start. I don't know if many people knew that. Probably the old time DSM tuners guys would know that, but the just generic aerodynamics of the 2G is better than like an Evo or a Subaru or whatever, right? So where you're starting on the aero side of things is better too.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a good platform aerodynamics wise, and I think suspension wise as well. It's just that the aftermarket support's not there.
Yeah.
So we're learning as we go, and guys like Bobby Golden from FIBA Motorsport are really helping a lot. Like, I'm running his front subframe, and it's fantastic, and he's coming out with all sorts of new parts all the time, which is really cool to see because these cars are like going on 30 years old now.
Oh yeah, for sure. He seems like he's always trying something new.
Yeah, which is sweet.
Yep. Well, Garrett, if someone out there is listening, they have a 2G, listen to this, and they're thinking, I don't want to spend the money that it takes to go drag racing. Maybe I want to get into this type of racing. What modifications should they start with on their 2G so they could kind of get into it easier?
I mean, I'd go out and buy, a medium decent set of coilovers. I started with Coney Yellows, and ground control coils. I think a lot of people started there, right? These days, I think there's better options. BC Racing has some nice stuff, and Feel, and a few of those guys. But a little bit of suspension, probably a little bit of definitely front brakes, and then a roll cage. To be fair, you go to time attack or track days and stuff, you don't need the roll cage right away, but to do hill climbs, you really should. I know in the States, there's a few hill climbs where you don't need a roll cage depending on the mods on your car, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know if I'd want to race a fast car up a hill without a roll cage. So right. I'd probably at least do a roll bar or something. But my car the first year I went, like I said, it was a roll cage and slicks and some ground control coils, like Coney Yellows, and that was pretty much it. A race seat. So there wasn't a lot done to it, and it had some power. It made 400 horse or whatever at the time, but nothing groundbreaking, and it worked pretty damn good. I beat my buddy's Subaru, and he'd been running that hill for years, so
wow,
I was pretty pumped about that.
So that's what's nice. The cost of entry is decently low.
Yeah, you don't have to go spend $100,000 to do it. That's for sure. You go buy a $3,500 salvage title Talon or something and turn it into a race car for pretty cheap. We built our own roll cage and messed around with it in the garage. I bought a tubing bender. My brother's a welder, so that helps. But yeah, it wasn't a huge dollar adventure just to go racing. It's gotten a little bit out of hand at this point. But
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Kirkpatrick Auto and Fleet Repair. Kirkpatrick Auto and Fleet Repair is a local, full-featured auto shop in Chilliwack, British Columbia, with years of experience and comprehensive ability. Instead of searching for a different provider every time your vehicle has a problem, their team of technicians is at the ready to deal with everything from electrical problems to diagnostic issues. They believe in providing the best possible customer service and transparent pricing for all the work they do. When you choose them, you'll know that you're in good hands, and that when you drive your vehicle away from their shop, it will have an excellent repair or maintenance service. That's the Kirkpatrick Auto and Fleet Repair way. Find out more about their products and services at kirkpatrick.ca. Well, let's say that I'm just a car enthusiast in general, and I want to get into hill climb racing. I'm looking at events near me, but maybe I want to start out slow. Should I start doing autocross or maybe doing some amateur grid life stuff to get prepared for the car handling going into hill climbing?
Yeah, I would definitely start on track days and stuff. I don't know the ins and outs of the rules in the US, and it changes state to state as well, I'm sure. But up here you need to have a senior time attack license, which means you have to go get your time attack license, and then you have to do a few events, and then you get a senior time attack license.
Oh, wow.
And once you have that, you can run the hill climb. There's definitely some hill climbs in the States where you don't need a full license and whatnot. Or you might have to pay for it, but I don't think there's a lot of messing around in the beginning to get it. But if you're gonna drive a car at anger up a road that's not meant to be driven like that with trees and cliffs and shit, I would definitely say it's the best place to start. Is even if it's autocross, go to autocross, maybe do some track days, get yourself into some time attack. I would definitely start on the track, and then the safety factor is so much higher. Get a feeling for where your car's at. Get all the teething issues out of the way, because even a fairly stock car with just some, the obvious upgrades, better radiator, whatever, brakes and stuff, you're going to find issues that are much easier to deal with if you're at a track day or whatever than a hill climb where you only get a couple of runs a day or whatever, right?
Yeah. And, circuit racer guys, they always say that autocrossers make great circuit racers, and I have to assume the same would be true for hill climb, because you're not really going around a lot of corners fast, right?
Yeah, it depends on the hill climb, but you don't have a lot of first gear corners and stuff on tracks. I don't know if I've ever been on a track that had a first gear corner. Where like the hill climbs, there's like even the hill climb I run locally here, there's 3 switchbacks that are first gear corners. So that's like autocross speeds for sure.
Yeah.
Like you're going 25 or 30 miles an hour through those.
Well, cool.
So yeah, autocross definitely is probably a good place for that. And like mechanical grip on hill climbs is big, as is aero as well. But I mean, in the slow stuff, like 20, 30 mile an hour, like your aero's not doing much for you at those speeds.
Yeah. Well, Garrett, what are your goals for 2024 with this car?
I was hoping to go to Global Time Attack at the Ridge in Washington, but I don't think my new turbo is going to be ready in time. So don't think that's going to happen. But I haven't mentioned this publicly yet, but I am planning to do the San Pedro hill climb in the Baja in Mexico. It's a couple hours south of Tijuana. Sergio from Carbonetics mentioned it to me this year, and I think we're going to kind of team up. He's going to come down and be my pit crew, and we're going to try and make a run at that. And it's the longest hill climb in the world, so
no kidding.
That's going to be, yeah, it's like 30 kilometers. So
holy cow!
For American folks, I don't know how many miles that is, 20, something like that. But it's long. It's real long. So I'm still going to have trouble keeping the car cool, I think, for that. So I might add a few extra coolers and stuff. But my goal is to do that. That's in October. Me and Sergio are going to start trying to raise money and find sponsors and stuff to go do that. That'll be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's about half the distance of going to Pennsylvania. So I like that. Which is crazy. It's only like 2,400 kilometers or something from here. And like we just were chatting about earlier, Pennsylvania's like 4,400.
Then you got to drive another 30 once you get there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, the Mexico one is my big goal for this year. I'll probably try to hit some time attacks and track days and stuff before that once I get the new turbo on the car.
Yeah.
The car's working pretty well right now. I'm gonna make a few aero changes and stuff. But yeah, the major goal this year is to see if we can get to Mexico in October.
Okay. What is a typical like weekend look like for this hill cross? You get some practice laps and then there's 1 or 2 for like official time?
It changes a lot. Like if you look at Pikes Peak, you only get to practice on a third of the track a few times the week before, and then you get one run. Like you only get to go up the whole hill at Pikes Peak once. So, and I mean it's like whatever it is, 14.5 kilometers or something, and I forget 156 turns. Like it's insane. Like our local hill climb is 2.1 miles and 9 turns. Like you can memorize that in a couple of runs. Like takes a little bit more time to really eke out every 10th, but we usually do 1 practice run on Saturday morning, and then we'll get 2 to 3 runs the rest of the day Saturday, and then 3 or 4 runs on Sunday, just kind of depending on how many cars are there and incidents and whatever. But yeah, over the course of the Knox Mountain weekend, which is my home one, we get about 8 runs a weekend. And at 2 minutes long, that's not a lot of track time.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like tricky. A lot until you realize it's just 2 minutes. Yeah.
16 minutes.
Yeah.
16 minutes over the whole weekend, where like you go to a track day, you get more than 16 minutes every session.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And we got it actually, we have the hill climb in the simulator now too. It's
cool.
Audiker Racing built it for Assetto Corsa. So the hill climb's on Assetto now too. So we actually bring the simulator to the pits, and we sit in there with all the guys, and we jerk around racing on the simulator between runs, which is fun.
That's awesome. That must help out a lot.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's not perfect, right? Because it's not like a laser scanned one, and like a guy made it from Google Maps data and pictures and videos and whatnot. But it's very close, and I find that just even the rhythm of just the braking zones, the shifting, and like I build a car not in the Assetto that kind of matches the gear ratios and stuff. So like you're shifting in a similar place, and you're try to set it up so you're braking in a similar place, and the power so that it makes, you know, running very close to the times that I've run, and just the cadence and the like muscle memory of going up the hill. So it's neat. We have a good time with it.
That's cool. Well, Garrett, what are the long-term goals with this car?
Pikes Peak. I really want to go to Pikes Peak. It's ever since I started doing this, I was like, that has to be the end goal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. If you're doing hill climbing and hill climbing is your thing, Pikes Peak is the Monaco or the Indy 500 of hill climbing, right? So I want to do that. That's part of the reason I want to go to Mexico this year is because it's such a long hill climb and it's much cheaper to run the Mexico hill climb, and I can figure out if the car is even capable of running for 15 minutes at a time up a hill in the heat. So I'm hoping that'll be a good litmus test for what needs to happen to the car, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be perfect, but I'd rather find that out there where the entry fee is like I think $750 instead of, you know, 3,000 or 4,000.
So what is it about Pikes Peak that makes it so prestigious? Is it the elevation going up? Is it the amount of turns? Because we, you know, obviously now we know it's not the longest.
Yeah, well, and like the San Pedro one in Mexico is only like in its 7th or 8th year, so it's pretty new.
Oh, okay.
Reese Millen's run it. I don't know if you're a hill climb guy, you might know about Reese Millen. He's
I think I've seen him on autocross or not a rallycross
he's won
before.
Pikes Peak. Yeah, he might have run that stuff. I'm not sure, but he's won Pikes Peak a few times. The Millens are a big name in the Pikes Peak world, and he I believe holds the record at the San Pedro one. It's around 14.5 minutes or something, and I believe my car is capable of beating that because what he was driving was not my car. But I mean, the thing is 30 kilometers of road that I think you're gonna get. It sounds like maybe 4 or 5 runs over like 3 days. That's a lot of road to try and memorize, and I don't think you are going to memorize it. You're going to have to drive it by sight for a lot of it, so that's going to take some testicular fortitude.
For sure. Is this something that you could have a co-driver on, or would that not be?
No, it's you're on your own. Okay. And like Pikes Peak used to do co-drivers, but I don't think they do anymore. You didn't have to, but you could. There was like a rally class, and I don't think that exists anymore. Okay. But yeah, I mean, back to the beginning of your question, why it's prestigious. I mean, I guess it's going into its 102nd or something year now, and
been going so long.
I guess it's just one of the biggest hill climbs on the planet. Like if you go to almost any other hill climb, they're typically between 30 seconds and 2 minutes long. Like they're usually quite short. It's not an easy thing to find a road that you can shut down, right? Like most of these roads go to nothing. Like even the hill climb we do here, the road like goes to a lookout and that's it. And same with the one I've run in the States. It kind of just goes to a lookout and stops, and there's nothing there. There's no houses up there. So it's not a difficult road to shut down. And I think that's where the trouble is that finding a road that is cool enough and fun enough to race up that you can also shut down for a few days and not mess up a bunch of people's lives. So yeah, it's tricky finding that. And I mean, not to mention, I think Pikes Peak starts at 10,000 feet and goes to 14,100. Like that's some elevation, which creates a whole other host of problems. Like ambient pressure at the top of Pikes Peak's like 8 PSI or something. So like your coolant system hates life. Like never mind if like, even if you can keep it cool and you have whatever, 12 psi cap on there, all of a sudden your absolute pressure is only 20, where at sea level it's 24, 25, 26. So like boil over and like all that stuff gets real difficult. Your aero doesn't work, your engine doesn't want to work, like everything about it sucks. You don't want to work. Like most guys are on oxygen at Pike Peak.
I was gonna say even you can't get enough air.
No, exactly. Like if you're running Pikes Peak, if I recall, it's on the entry form. You can ask for oxygen in the car.
Wow.
And most guys I've talked to have highly recommended it. You don't want to be getting halfway up there and just forgetting where you are. Like I've heard stories of guys like I thought I felt fine, and I went from the gas to go to the brake, and my foot just did not do what I told it to do, and I just drove straight off the track. Jeez. Like just hypoxia, like decision making out the window. Everything just messed right up. So from what I know, everybody says if you're not used to that altitude and you haven't trained at that altitude, run the oxygen.
Sounds like it could be a lifesaver.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I've never even been to 10,000 feet, never mind 14. Tallest mountains around where I live are like 7,000 feet. And I know when I'm up there, I feel like I'm down a lung.
Right. So you already went over your events that you plan to attend in 2024. Do you want to go back over them?
I mean, real quick, like we planned to do some testing this spring, and then I spun a bearing on the motor, and that pushed my build all the way out to like the week before the hill climb. So I went and ran Knox Mountain, got 2 runs, turbo blew up. I've got a new turbo sponsor now. I'll hold off for that announcement, but they're working on building me a G series based turbo, and when that's ready, I'm gonna figure out where I fall in the year. I'm not exactly sure where that's gonna be. It sounds like they're about 3 weeks to get the compressor wheel milled, and that was a week ago, so we're probably still a good month out. Plus I'm going to T3 now, so I got to change my manifold and my downpipe. All that stuff has to get redone now, so that'll be a little bit of work. So once I figure out where I'm at, then I can decide what's gonna be next, but I'm betting that it'll be July before I've got things going, and then that doesn't leave a lot of time till October, so I'll probably just do a couple of track days, get the car on the dyno, stuff like that, get things figured out, and I'm going to continue on my progress as far as doing aero changes on the car, and then see if I can raise the money to get to San Pedro in Mexico.
Well, let me know. I definitely would love to share it.
Yeah, well, I told Sergio, like, once I knew what where I was at with the car here and the turbo and stuff, that we would start promoting it, and he's gonna kind of help me out with that and help me with a pit crew, because I'll head down to Tijuana, which is where Carbonetics is based out of, and it's a couple hours south of there, so probably go stay with him for a day and meet all his guys. And it sounds like he's got a few guys that are willing to come with us and help me with the car, and then I've got a couple of cars from the States that we hill climb with in Canada that are interested in coming with us, so there might be a little bit of a crew of us going down there. So
that'd be cool. Well, where can people find and follow you on social media so they can see some more pictures of this car, or even donate to your fund to go down to Mexico and run the hill climb?
Yeah, so I don't know what I'm going to do as far as the donations go. I mean, it's always kind of a weird thing pulling a GoFundMe. But if I can find some sponsors, a couple of sponsors that want to help us, that's probably what I'll do.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm never against people wanting to give me money. So if you want to give me money, call me up. Mealing Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I don't post as much on Instagram as I probably should. But yeah, I try to post on social media, but life's busy, so I don't probably do it as much. But there's lots of videos and pictures and stuff. If you Google Mealing Racing, almost everything that comes up is me.
Well, awesome. Well, Garrett, is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout out to for helping you get where you are, helping the car get where it is?
I mean, it's the sponsors for sure. Like, I'm just a regular dude. I don't have tons of money, so I'm always appreciative of the help I get. 4Function Autosport in Kelowna, BC helps me with dyno tuning. Boost and Performance gave me a good deal on their bearing plate this year. X-Clutch USA hooked me up with their awesome sprung twin plate clutch, which feels fantastic. I've been dealing with Bobby Gold at FIBA Motorsport for years. I'm running his subframe. I think mine was actually the first one of that new subframe that he's built for the front, and it's been fantastic. And then, like, probably the longest guy is Carbonetics Carbon Fiber Sergio, because he was the one that helped us build the V2 kit in the first place, and I'm running that whole kit, the doors, the hood, the hatch, like almost everything on that car is his. So as far as the body goes, so yeah, those guys definitely are how I got where I am.
Hell yeah. And if you're watching or if you're listening to this and you've never seen this kit, you need to go check it out, because obviously the 2G is amazing looking because of the lines of the body, and somehow the kit just accentuates those lines. It doesn't take away from the overall shape at all.
I'm going to do a Google image search. Yeah. If you type Mealing Racing in on Google image search, there's like the first 7 pictures are all my car. Oh, even some of the way it started. That's fun.
That's cool.
Actually, it's more like the first 20 pictures are all my car.
Well, there you go.
But yeah, I know.
Google it, click images, and take a look at how cool this car looks.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. I hope that we can maybe inspire some people to go follow you and check out what you're doing, or maybe even attempt one of these themselves.
Yeah, let's get Steve Kaminsky on here from X Clutch, and we'll chat about clutches.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Right on, man.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.